has been one of the most complex to navigate in recent history from an insurance industry perspective. To further discuss this, we join now on the line by Simon Colman. Simon, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Africa Midday.
Thanks for having me, Zakwana.
Simon, talk us through the evolution of the risk landscape, especially in this past year, which I think has affected all industries, really.
Yeah, look, I mean, as insurance underwriters, we not only have to focus on what's happening at a specific point in time, but also try and predict what's on the horizon. And I think as an industry, none of us really saw the pandemic coming. Let alone the risk specialists not understanding what was on the horizon. I think for business owners, it was probably even more prevalent. But the kind of things that we've seen happening since the various lockdowns that have affected the risk landscape are things like, the quality of products, the quality of risks. So a lot of businesses had to change or switch suppliers just because they couldn't get, raw materials that they might have been using before. And that in turn, in some instances, led to a drop in the quality of those products. And those can, of course, be quite dangerous if it's something that, say, goes into an automobile or it's a pharmaceutical, something like that. And I think the other big shift that we saw was in the cyber landscape. This is your online environment. And with many businesses rushing to transform or adapt their businesses so that they could trade online, there was a whole bunch of risks that came with that. And whilst we've started seeing some claims coming in for things like hacking, I think it's really just the tip of the iceberg at this point.
And you say it's the tip of the iceberg. How has the industry been dealing with a lot of these changes? Has this been a time where you've had to almost create a new normal for yourselves, and also in terms of the consultation that happens when new decisions are made around some of these things?
Yes, absolutely. And thanks for asking, because really how we've tried to deal with these things is we try to assist our clients, business owners, through the insurance brokers in understanding what some of these risks are. So one of the things we have to deal with is something like corporate governance. So even in a small business, how does the business let the shareholders and customers know about changes that are happening in their environment? So we saw a lot of board meetings having to suddenly shift into an online environment, and we had to make sure that we advised our clients that they needed to have an item on the agenda to discuss things like the impact of COVID. What's the impact on employees? How are they going to manage when staff start returning to the office? Because these all form a part of the risk environment that the business is operating in. So we've tried to share some of our insights, but it's a moving target. So you see something that could be an issue, or we obviously watch what's happening in other environments overseas, and then we share that information with our brokers and our clients as best we can. I have to say, I'm really impressed with how most businesses have embraced this new normal. We've even seen a couple of winners, coming out of it, where they've said, we're not going to go back to the way that we were doing things before, because this is actually better for us. It works for our staff. It works for our customers. So even though it may have started out as something traumatic for the business, they've been able to establish a silver lining. But let me just qualify that by saying that's really the exception rather than the rule. Most businesses have really struggled through this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that comes as absolutely no surprise, Simon. Businesses are struggling, and I can imagine the added pressure for the insurance sector at this time. Now, I mean, I've already shared some of the findings of this specialist risk review, but what are some of the ones that really stand out for you at this point?
Yeah, for me, it's a lengthy report, and we try to cover a lot of topics. but something that I saw popping up time and time again, and I think it's something we need to be aware of as a society, and not just here in South Africa, and that's the impact on our employees. Because, particularly if you're running a manufacturing or service environment where safety is a critical factor, and I'm not talking about the washing of hands or wearing of masks. I'm just talking about where you've got somebody who is operating machinery or equipment or doing something where if they're not 100% focused on what they're doing, they're going to injure themselves or other people. And what we saw coming out of the last year was that employee morale was low. And it was low for a couple of reasons. It was low because in a lot of instances, people were working less hours because the company had to cut back. In some instances, some of their colleagues had lost their jobs because the company had to retrench people. And then what we also saw was that when there were cutbacks in staff, the business was often expecting the remaining people to pick up where the others had left off. So, if somebody, for instance, used to pack shelves only, now they were packing shelves and they were cleaning the floors,
sure,
and maybe even doing the locking up of the shop after hours. So, you had a lot more risk attaching to this, because now you've got somebody who's demoralized, maybe tired, overworked, dealing with a lot of stresses at home, not to mention this sort of pandemic news that just hits you whenever you turn on your TV or radio. So, and that, of course, leads to accidents. And I think businesses need to pay a lot more attention to their staff. They need to listen to them, and they need to spot these things before they become problems, not just from a litigation perspective. I mean, it's the right thing to do. If you care about your people, you should be looking at these things, and we're kind of all in this together at the end of the day. That was a sort of a golden thread that I saw running through the report. And the other thing that I spotted was the risk management aspects. That for many years here in South Africa, businesses kind of took the view that, if I pay my premium and I take out an insurance policy, then I don't have to worry about the risk. I've almost transferred the worry with the insurance premium. But of course, what we're seeing now is that, businesses can buy insurance for certain things, but there's many things that they can't insure either. And for those, they have to adopt a risk management mindset in their companies, just like we were talking about now with the staff. But perhaps more importantly, if something happens, how will my business respond to that? The insurance is one element of the risk management. What are the other things that I have in place to make sure that I can survive this, or that I can pivot my business into something else? So it's really taking a more holistic view of risk rather than just looking at insurance and risk as this one thing, this sort of interchangeable thing. And I think if we can do that going forward, we can perhaps be better prepared, not completely, because you can't imagine every conceivable risk. But we can certainly mitigate our own risk by adopting that kind of mindset.
Well, Samaj, before we let you go, I mean, with all the picture that you've painted is quite a bleak one, in terms of everything that you've had to deal with as a result of this pandemic. Are you optimistic that things will change for the better in this year? Or can we expect, to still be in a bit of a tricky situation here?
Look, Zikona, I think to some extent, we're obviously at the mercy of our own economy.
Sure.
Until we get that back on track, it's probably going to be quite tough. But yes, I don't want to leave you with this bleak picture. As I said, the positives that we saw, we interviewed 1,000 business owners, and it was unbelievable to see, more than half of those companies had implemented various things that actually improved the way that they operated. And, after all of this is over, people are going to look back and hopefully we're not just too tempted to go back to the old way.
Yeah.
But to go like, can you remember we used to sit in the traffic for 2 hours every day to go to a place to do a job that we could have done from home? So I think those things, and we had our president talking about the fourth industrial revolution. We got fast-tracked through that process in many industries because of COVID. That's a big win. That's a 5-year project that got accelerated into 12 months. And I think that's amazing. We need to hold on to that and do something with it. But we have to be sensible because we've got to get through these next, rocky few months or years.
Well, thank you for leaving us on that optimistic note, but realistic nonetheless. Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.